The air in Boise, Idaho, in the summer of 2011, hung thick and heavy, carrying the scent of pine and the promise of afternoon thunderstorms. Beneath the idyllic facade of a growing city nestled against the foothills of the Rocky Mountains, an unsettling quiet began to spread, a disquiet born from unanswered questions and a gnawing sense of unease. It was June 27th, a day that started like any other, filled with sunshine and the bustle of daily life, but a day that would soon be etched in the community's memory as the beginning of a chilling mystery. The disappearance of Linda Carver sent ripples of fear and uncertainty through the close-knit neighborhoods and bustling real estate offices of Boise, leaving behind a void that would take years to fill. Linda Carver was a fixture in the Boise real estate scene. A dedicated professional with an infectious smile and an unwavering commitment to her clients, Linda was known for her sharp negotiation skills and her genuine care for the people she served. More than just a real estate agent, she was a trusted advisor, a friend, and a pillar of her community. Her colleagues admired her work ethic, her clients appreciated her honesty, and her family adored her. Linda was the kind of person who brightened a room simply by walking into it, a woman whose positive energy was as reliable as the sunrise. She was a loving wife and a devoted mother, the heart of a family that revolved around her warmth and guidance. Her husband, Doug, and their children were her world, the driving force behind her ambition and the source of her greatest joy. She meticulously balanced her demanding career with her responsibilities at home, always making time for school events, family dinners, and bedtime stories. Her life was a testament to her unwavering dedication, a carefully woven tapestry of professional success and personal fulfillment. The morning of June 27th began much like any other for Linda. She woke early, prepared breakfast for her family, and saw her children off to school. After a quick check of her emails and a few phone calls to confirm appointments, she headed out for a busy day of showings. Among her scheduled appointments was a showing at a house on the outskirts of Boise, a property that had recently come on the market and generated a considerable amount of interest. It was a crucial opportunity to connect with potential buyers and showcase her expertise in the local market. According to records, the last confirmed contact with Linda was a brief phone call she made to her office around midday, confirming the time and location of the upcoming showing. She seemed upbeat and professional, with no indication of anything amiss. This seemingly routine phone call would later become a chilling reminder of the last time anyone known to her spoke to her. As the afternoon wore on, Linda's family began to worry. She was always punctual, meticulously organized, and fiercely reliable. When she failed to return home at her usual time, and her calls went unanswered, Doug's concern quickly escalated to panic. He immediately contacted Linda's office, only to learn that she had not checked in after her last scheduled showing. A frantic search began, with Doug, Linda's colleagues, and close friends scouring the city, retracing her planned route, and desperately hoping for any sign of her whereabouts. The police were immediately notified, and an official investigation was launched. Initial interviews with family, friends, and colleagues revealed no obvious motives for her disappearance. Everyone described Linda as a happy, successful, and well-adjusted individual with no known enemies or financial troubles. The lack of any clear explanation only deepened the mystery and heightened the sense of urgency. The investigation quickly expanded, involving multiple law enforcement agencies and drawing upon a wide range of resources. The Boise real estate market in 2011 was a competitive landscape, characterized by fluctuating prices, increasing demand, and a constant pressure to close deals. While Linda was a successful agent, the industry itself could be stressful, with long hours, demanding clients, and the ever-present threat of losing out on commissions. However, those who knew Linda well insisted that she thrived under pressure and possessed a remarkable ability to navigate the challenges of her profession. She had built a solid reputation based on trust and integrity, and she rarely allowed the stress of the market to affect her positive attitude. Nevertheless, investigators explored all possible angles, including the potential for work-related conflicts or disputes with clients or colleagues. They delved into her professional relationships, scrutinizing her deals and meticulously reviewing her communications. Boise, Idaho, is a city that blends urban sophistication with the rugged beauty of the surrounding wilderness. The specific area where Linda disappeared was a mix of established residential neighborhoods and newer developments on the city's outskirts. The house she was scheduled to show was located in a relatively quiet area, with tree-lined streets and well-maintained properties. The real estate market in this particular area was booming, attracting young families and professionals seeking affordable housing and a high quality of life. The combination of rapid growth and a competitive market created a unique dynamic, with real estate agents playing a crucial role in shaping the city's landscape. The area was not particularly known for crime, which is why Linda's disappearance was so shocking to the local residents. The house itself sat on a corner lot, with a well-kept lawn and a detached two-car garage. If you enjoy true crime content and want to follow this investigation closely, please subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell. We'll be diving deep into this case, exploring every angle, and uncovering the shocking truth behind Linda Carver's disappearance. Stay tuned for more updates as we unravel this Idaho cold case. As the days turned into weeks, the search for Linda intensified, transforming from a local concern into a statewide effort. Law enforcement agencies from across Idaho joined the investigation, bringing in specialized resources and expertise. Volunteers from the community poured into the search area, organizing themselves into teams and meticulously combing through the surrounding terrain. Search dogs, with their keen sense of smell, were deployed to track Linda's scent, leading investigators through fields, forests, and along the banks of the Boise River. Aerial searches were conducted using helicopters and small planes, providing a bird's-eye view of the vast landscape and helping to identify any potential areas of interest. Despite the extensive search efforts, no trace of Linda was found. No sign of her car, no personal belongings, nothing that could provide a clue to her whereabouts. The lack of any concrete evidence only deepened the mystery and fueled the growing sense of despair. The initial hope of finding her alive began to dwindle, replaced by a grim realization that something terrible had likely happened. The disappearance of Linda Carver quickly became a major news story, dominating headlines and capturing the attention of the entire region. Local news channels provided round-the-clock coverage, featuring interviews with her family, friends, and colleagues. Newspapers published detailed articles outlining the timeline of events, highlighting the efforts of law enforcement, and appealing to the public for any information that might lead to her discovery. The media coverage played a crucial role in raising awareness of the case and mobilizing community support. It also served as a constant reminder of the uncertainty and fear that gripped the city. While the media attention helped to keep the case in the public eye, it also added to the pressure on investigators to find answers and bring closure to Linda's family. The constant scrutiny and speculation created a difficult environment for everyone involved, as they grappled with the emotional toll of the unknown. In the early stages of the investigation, detectives pursued a number of leads, exploring various potential scenarios and interviewing numerous individuals who may have had contact with Linda. Some early leads involved individuals with a history of violence, or those who had previously expressed an interest in Linda or her properties. These individuals were quickly brought in for questioning, their backgrounds thoroughly investigated, and their alibis carefully scrutinized. However, none of these early leads panned out. Investigators were unable to find any concrete evidence linking these individuals to Linda's disappearance. Each dead end added to the frustration and complexity of the case, making it increasingly difficult to determine the direction of the investigation. The lack of any solid leads created a sense of urgency to explore every possible avenue, no matter how improbable it might seem. The house showing where Linda was last seen became a focal point of the investigation. Detectives meticulously examined the property, searching for any signs of a struggle, any discarded items, or any other clues that might shed light on what happened. They interviewed the homeowners, the neighbors, and anyone who might have been in the area on the day of her disappearance. The house itself was a typical suburban dwelling, with a well-manicured front yard, a spacious interior, and a backyard that backed onto a wooded area. The surrounding neighborhood was quiet and residential, with little foot traffic or activity during the day. This made it difficult to identify any potential witnesses or to determine if anyone had seen anything suspicious. The layout of the house was also a concern, as it had multiple entrances and exits, making it possible for someone to enter or leave the property undetected. The fact that Linda was showing the house alone also raised concerns about her safety, highlighting the potential risks associated with working in the real estate industry. As part of the investigation, detectives conducted a thorough financial background check on Linda, scrutinizing her bank accounts, credit card statements, and investment records. They were looking for any signs of financial trouble, any unusual transactions, or any other indications that she might have been experiencing financial stress. However, the financial investigation revealed nothing of concern. Linda was financially stable, with no outstanding debts or any other financial problems that might have motivated her to disappear. Her personal life was also examined in detail, with investigators interviewing her family, friends, and colleagues to gain a better understanding of her relationships and her overall well-being. Everyone described her as a happy and well-adjusted individual, with a strong support system and no known personal problems. This eliminated several potential motives for her disappearance, further complicating the investigation and making it even more difficult to determine what might have happened to her. The community rallied around Linda's family, offering support, comfort, and assistance in any way they could. Vigils were held in her honor, with hundreds of people gathering to pray, share stories, and express their hope for her safe return. Local businesses organized fundraisers to help support the family financially, and volunteers provided meals, childcare, and other essential services. The outpouring of community support was a testament to the impact that Linda had on the lives of those around her. It also served as a powerful reminder of the human cost of her disappearance, highlighting the pain and suffering that her family and friends were enduring. The community's unwavering support provided a source of strength and resilience during a time of immense uncertainty and grief. In the absence of any concrete evidence, investigators considered a number of different theories regarding Linda's disappearance. One theory was that she had been abducted, possibly by a stranger or someone she had encountered during her work. Another theory was that she had been the victim of foul play, perhaps related to a real estate deal gone wrong or a personal dispute. A third theory, though considered unlikely by those who knew her, was that she had run away, leaving her family and her life behind. However, this theory was quickly dismissed by her family and friends, who insisted that she would never abandon her children or her responsibilities. The possibility of abduction or foul play remained the most likely scenarios, but without any evidence to support these theories, the investigation remained at a standstill. The mystery surrounding Linda Carver's disappearance continued to deepen, casting a long shadow over the Boise community, and leaving her family and friends in a state of agonizing uncertainty. As weeks dissolved into months, and months bled into years, the investigation into Linda Carver's disappearance grew increasingly cold. The initial flurry of activity, the constant media coverage, and the unwavering hope of finding her alive gradually faded, replaced by a heavy silence and a gnawing sense of resignation. Despite the best efforts of law enforcement, no new leads emerged, no significant breakthroughs were made, and the case remained shrouded in mystery. Detectives continued to follow up on any tips or potential sightings, but each lead turned out to be a dead end, further diminishing the chances of finding Linda or uncovering the truth behind her disappearance. The lack of progress took a heavy toll on everyone involved, from the investigators who dedicated countless hours to the case to Linda's family, who were left to grapple with the agonizing uncertainty of her fate. The emotional toll was immeasurable, as hopes slowly dwindled and the reality of the situation began to sink in. The case, once a priority, was relegated to the files of unsolved mysteries, a stark reminder of the limitations of law enforcement and the enduring pain of unanswered questions. The emotional toll on Linda's family was devastating. Doug, her husband, struggled to maintain a sense of normalcy for their children, while battling his own grief and despair. He tirelessly pursued any potential leads, working with private investigators and constantly pressuring law enforcement to keep the case open. The children, too, were deeply affected by their mother's absence, struggling to understand what had happened and longing for her return. Birthdays, holidays, and other special occasions became painful reminders of the void in their lives. The family's grief was compounded by the lack of closure, the agonizing uncertainty of not knowing whether Linda was alive or dead, and the constant speculation surrounding her disappearance. They clung to the hope that one day, they would finally get the answers they desperately needed, but as time went on, that hope became increasingly fragile. The community continued to offer support, but the pain of Linda's absence remained a constant presence in their lives, a shadow that lingered over everything they did. Years passed, and the Boise community slowly began to heal, but the memory of Linda Carver's disappearance remained a haunting reminder of the city's vulnerability. New businesses opened, new families moved in, and the city continued to grow and evolve, but the unsolved mystery of Linda's fate remained an open wound. Her name was still spoken in hushed tones, her story a cautionary tale about the dangers that lurk beneath the surface of everyday life. The real estate community, in particular, was deeply affected by her disappearance, with many agents taking extra precautions to ensure their safety when showing properties alone. The case served as a stark reminder of the risks involved in their profession and the importance of prioritizing personal safety. Linda's legacy lived on through the memories of those who knew and loved her, and her story continued to inspire acts of kindness, compassion, and community support. Then, years later, a glimmer of hope emerged, a renewed spark of interest that reignited the investigation into Linda Carver's disappearance. A new detective, recently assigned to the cold case unit, took a fresh look at the file, bringing a new perspective and a determination to uncover the truth. The detective, a seasoned investigator with a reputation for solving complex cases, was struck by the lack of concrete evidence and the numerous unanswered questions that still lingered. Armed with new technology and a fresh approach, the detective began to meticulously re-examine every aspect of the case, leaving no stone unturned. This renewed interest was also partly fueled by advancements in forensic science and DNA technology, which offered the potential to analyze existing evidence in new and more sophisticated ways. The hope was that these advancements could provide new insights and potentially identify a suspect who had previously been overlooked. The renewed investigation began with a comprehensive review of all existing evidence, including witness statements, forensic findings, and digital records. Detectives re-interviewed key witnesses, seeking to clarify any inconsistencies and identify any new information that might have been missed during the initial investigation. They meticulously analyzed phone records, financial documents, and other forms of communication, looking for any potential connections or clues that could lead to a breakthrough. The forensic evidence was re-examined using the latest technology, with particular attention paid to DNA samples and trace evidence that had been collected from the crime scene. The goal was to identify any potential matches or links to individuals who had not previously been considered suspects. This painstaking process of re-examination was crucial to ensuring that no detail was overlooked and that every possible avenue was explored. As part of the renewed investigation, detectives revisited the original suspect pool, the individuals who had been initially questioned but ultimately eliminated as suspects. They carefully reviewed the reasons why these individuals had been ruled out, looking for any potential flaws in the original investigation or any new information that might cast doubt on their alibis. Some of these individuals had moved out of the area, while others had passed away, but detectives made every effort to track them down and re-interview them. The goal was to ensure that no potential suspect was overlooked and that every possible lead was thoroughly investigated. While it seemed unlikely that the answer would lie with someone who had already been considered, detectives recognized the importance of leaving no stone unturned in their quest to uncover the truth about Linda Carver's disappearance. The possibility remained that a crucial piece of information had been missed or misinterpreted during the initial investigation, and the renewed effort was aimed at correcting any such oversights. The breakthrough, when it finally came, was as unexpected as it was unsettling. It involved someone who had barely registered on the initial investigation's radar, a seemingly unremarkable individual with a tenuous connection, at best, to Linda Carver. This person, whom we will call Mr. Henderson, to protect potential privacy concerns before any official legal pronouncements, was not a business rival, not an estranged acquaintance, and not someone with a known history of violence. He was, in many ways, an invisible member of the Boise community, the kind of person who blended seamlessly into the background, drawing little attention to himself. His name had appeared in some of the initial reports, a fleeting mention in connection with a minor detail, but he had been quickly dismissed as a person of interest. It was this very ordinariness, this lack of any obvious red flags, that made him such an unexpected suspect. The element of surprise was profound, sending shockwaves through the investigative team and forcing them to reevaluate everything they thought they knew about the case. The realization that someone so seemingly ordinary could be involved in such a heinous crime was a chilling reminder that appearances can be deceiving. The initial connections between Mr. Henderson and Linda Carver were faint, almost imperceptible. He lived in the same general vicinity as the house she was showing, and he had, at one point, expressed a passing interest in purchasing a property in that area. His name had surfaced during the canvassing of the neighborhood, but his statement was brief and uneventful, offering no information of value. He claimed to have been out of town on the day of Linda's disappearance, a claim that was initially corroborated by a family member. However, as detectives dug deeper, inconsistencies began to emerge. The family member's recollection of the events surrounding Mr. Henderson's trip proved to be vague and unreliable, raising doubts about the validity of his alibi. Furthermore, investigators discovered that Mr. Henderson had a history of minor offenses, including traffic violations and a few instances of petty theft, suggesting a pattern of dishonesty and a willingness to bend the rules. While these connections were far from conclusive, they were enough to pique the detectives' interest and warrant further investigation. The fact that Mr. Henderson had been so easily dismissed during the initial investigation only fueled their determination to uncover the truth. Building a case against Mr. Henderson was a painstaking process, requiring meticulous attention to detail and a relentless pursuit of corroborating evidence. The detectives began by meticulously reconstructing Mr. Henderson's movements on the day of Linda's disappearance, gathering phone records, credit card statements, and surveillance footage to verify his alibi and identify any potential discrepancies. They interviewed his neighbors, colleagues, and acquaintances, seeking to gain a better understanding of his character, his habits, and his relationships. They also delved into his financial history, looking for any signs of financial distress or unusual transactions that might suggest a motive for the crime. The process was slow and arduous, but the detectives were determined to build a solid case based on circumstantial evidence and logical inference. They understood that they needed to create a compelling narrative that would convince a jury of Mr. Henderson's guilt, even in the absence of direct evidence. Each piece of information, no matter how small or insignificant it might seem, was carefully analyzed and pieced together to form a complete picture. Forensic evidence played a crucial role in building the case against Mr. Henderson. Although there was no direct physical evidence linking him to Linda's disappearance, detectives were able to uncover several pieces of trace evidence that suggested a connection. Fibers found in Mr. Henderson's car matched the type of fabric used in Linda's clothing. Soil samples taken from his shoes were consistent with the soil found near the house she was showing. While these pieces of evidence were not conclusive on their own, they provided strong circumstantial support for the prosecution's case. The detectives also focused on analyzing any potential DNA evidence that might be available. They re-examined items that had been collected from the crime scene, using the latest DNA technology to try to identify any potential matches. The process was time-consuming and expensive, but the detectives were determined to exhaust every possible avenue in their pursuit of justice. The hope was that a single DNA match could provide the breakthrough they needed to definitively link Mr. Henderson to Linda's disappearance. Digital forensics proved to be another valuable tool in the investigation. Detectives obtained warrants to search Mr. Henderson's electronic devices, including his computers, phones, and social media accounts. They meticulously analyzed his internet search history, his emails, and his text messages, looking for any incriminating information or inconsistencies that might suggest his involvement in the crime. They discovered that Mr. Henderson had been researching topics related to crime and disappearance, including articles about cold cases and forensic investigations. He had also been visiting websites that featured graphic content and violent imagery, raising questions about his mental state and his potential for violence. Furthermore, detectives found evidence that Mr. Henderson had been communicating with individuals who had a history of criminal activity, suggesting that he may have been involved in illicit activities. These digital footprints provided a valuable insight into Mr. Henderson's private life and helped to build a more complete picture of his character and his potential motives. With a growing body of circumstantial and forensic evidence, detectives began to formulate a strategy for approaching Mr. Henderson for questioning. They knew that he was likely to deny any involvement in Linda's disappearance, and they needed to be prepared to challenge his denials and expose any inconsistencies in his story. They decided to use a combination of direct questioning and psychological techniques, aiming to create a sense of pressure and uncertainty that would make him more likely to reveal the truth. They also planned to present him with the evidence they had gathered, highlighting the connections between him and the crime scene. The detectives carefully studied Mr. Henderson's background, his personality, and his known habits, seeking to identify his vulnerabilities and tailor their questioning strategy accordingly. They understood that the interrogation would be a crucial turning point in the investigation, and they needed to be fully prepared to handle whatever Mr. Henderson might say or do. The success of the entire investigation rested on their ability to elicit the truth from a suspect who had remained hidden in plain sight for so many years. The interrogation room was stark, the air thick with unspoken tension. Mr. Henderson sat rigidly in his chair, his eyes darting nervously around the room, avoiding direct contact with the detectives. He had agreed to come in for questioning voluntarily, maintaining an air of polite cooperation, but his body language betrayed his inner turmoil. Detectives began by reviewing his initial statement from years ago, gently probing for any inconsistencies. Mr. Henderson stuck to his story, reiterating his alibi and denying any knowledge of Linda Carver's disappearance. He portrayed himself as a helpful citizen, eager to assist in any way he could, but his carefully rehearsed responses lacked sincerity. The detectives pressed him on specific details, asking about his whereabouts on June 27, 2011, his interactions with Linda, and his reasons for being in the vicinity of the house she was showing. Mr. Henderson remained steadfast, deflecting their questions with vague answers and carefully worded denials. As the interrogation progressed, detectives began to introduce the inconsistencies they had uncovered. They presented Mr. Henderson with phone records that contradicted his claim of being out of town, highlighting the fact that his cell phone had been used in the Boise area on the day of Linda's disappearance. They showed him credit card statements that revealed purchases made at local businesses, further undermining his alibi. Mr. Henderson's composure began to crack as he struggled to explain these discrepancies. He stammered, his voice wavering as he offered a series of increasingly implausible excuses. He claimed that his phone records must have been mistaken, that his credit card had been used by a family member without his knowledge, and that he simply couldn't remember the details of that particular day. The detectives pressed him harder, challenging his explanations and exposing the holes in his story. The turning point came when detectives presented Mr. Henderson with the forensic evidence they had gathered. They showed him the fibers found in his car, the soil samples from his shoes, and the evidence of his online searches related to crime and disappearance. They emphasized the unlikelihood of these connections being coincidental, suggesting that they pointed to a more sinister truth. Mr. Henderson grew increasingly agitated, his denials becoming more frantic and desperate. He accused the detectives of fabricating evidence, of trying to frame him for a crime he didn't commit. But as the weight of the evidence mounted, his resistance began to crumble. He shifted in his seat, his hands trembling, his eyes filled with fear and desperation. He was no longer the calm, cooperative citizen he had initially portrayed himself to be. He was a man on the verge of breaking. Under immense pressure, Mr. Henderson's story began to unravel. He made a partial admission, acknowledging that he had been in the vicinity of the house Linda was showing on the day of her disappearance. He claimed that he had been driving by, simply curious about the property, and that he had seen Linda briefly, but he insisted that he had not interacted with her. He maintained that he had no involvement in her disappearance, that he was simply a witness to something he didn't understand. The detective seized on this admission, pressing him for more details about what he had seen. They challenged his claim of being a mere bystander, suggesting that he knew more than he was letting on. They appealed to his sense of conscience, urging him to tell the truth and bring closure to Linda's family. The interrogation continued for hours, a relentless battle of wills between the detectives and Mr. Henderson. Finally, exhausted and defeated, he began to reveal the truth. He confessed that he had approached Linda at the house, intending to ask her about the property. He claimed that an argument had ensued, escalating into a physical altercation. He admitted to pushing her, causing her to fall and hit her head. He insisted that it was an accident, that he had not intended to harm her. He panicked, he said, and decided to cover up the incident, burying her body in a remote location. He led the detectives to the location and they found her. Mr. Henderson's motive for the crime was complex, a confluence of factors that had simmered beneath the surface for years. He had long harbored a sense of resentment towards successful people, viewing them as privileged and undeserving. Linda, with her successful career and happy family, represented everything he envied. He had also been experiencing financial difficulties, struggling to make ends meet and feeling increasingly desperate. He saw Linda as a potential target, someone he could exploit for financial gain. The argument that ensued, he claimed, was triggered by his attempt to extort money from her. When she refused, he lost control, resulting in the tragic accident that led to her death. He told the police that he felt like he had snapped. With the confession obtained and Linda's remains recovered, the long and arduous investigation finally reached its conclusion. The arrest of Mr. Henderson brought a sense of relief and closure to Linda's family and the Boise community, ending years of uncertainty and speculation. The unexpected identity of the suspect and the chilling details of the crime sent shockwaves through the region, serving as a stark reminder of the hidden dangers that can lurk beneath the surface of everyday life. The arrest of Mr. Henderson sent a jolt through the Boise community. After years of unanswered questions and the gnawing feeling of uncertainty, Linda Carver's family finally had answers. The relief was palpable, a collective sigh of release that echoed through the city. Yet, the relief was tempered by the grim reality of the crime and the chilling nature of the perpetrator. The charges against Mr. Henderson were severe: first-degree murder, kidnapping, and obstruction of justice. The weight of the evidence, coupled with his confession, painted a damning picture of his guilt. The legal process, while offering a path to justice, promised to be long and arduous, reopening old wounds and forcing Linda's loved ones to relive the pain of her disappearance. Yet they were resolute in their determination to see justice served and to ensure that Mr. Henderson was held accountable for his heinous actions. The media frenzy surrounding Mr. Henderson's arrest was immediate and intense. News vans descended on Boise, reporters clamoring for details and interviews. The story of Linda Carver's disappearance, once a local tragedy, became a national headline. Every aspect of the case was dissected and analyzed, from Mr. Henderson's seemingly ordinary background to the chilling details of his confession. The public reaction was a mixture of shock, anger, and grief. Many expressed disbelief that someone so seemingly unremarkable could be capable of such a brutal crime. Others voiced outrage at the years of deception and the pain that Mr. Henderson had inflicted on Linda's family. Social media platforms buzzed with discussions, debates, and expressions of support for the Carver family. The case became a symbol of the enduring power of hope and the relentless pursuit of justice. But also, it underscored the fragility of life and the hidden dangers that can lurk in the most unexpected places. The pre-trial proceedings began swiftly, with a series of hearings, motions, and plea negotiations. Mr. Henderson's defense team, led by a seasoned attorney, attempted to challenge the validity of his confession, arguing that it had been obtained under duress. They also sought to suppress key pieces of evidence, claiming that they had been obtained illegally or were otherwise inadmissible. The prosecution, led by the district attorney, countered these arguments, presenting a compelling case based on the overwhelming weight of the evidence. They emphasized the voluntary nature of Mr. Henderson's confession and the meticulous care with which the investigation had been conducted. The plea negotiations proved to be fruitless, as Mr. Henderson refused to plead guilty to the charges against him. He maintained his claim that Linda's death had been an accident, and that he had acted in self-defense. With a plea agreement out of the question, the case was set for trial, promising a long and difficult legal battle. The prosecution's strategy for presenting evidence at trial was meticulously planned. They intended to paint a comprehensive picture of Mr. Henderson's guilt, starting with his initial lies and inconsistencies and culminating in his eventual confession. They planned to call a series of expert witnesses, including forensic scientists, digital forensics experts, and psychological profilers, to testify about the evidence they had gathered and the conclusions they had reached. They also planned to call Linda's family and friends to testify about her character and the impact of her disappearance on their lives. The goal was to humanize Linda and to remind the jury of the devastating consequences of Mr. Henderson's actions. The prosecution team understood that they faced a formidable challenge in proving their case beyond a reasonable doubt, but they were confident that the weight of the evidence would ultimately prevail. The defense strategy, on the other hand, focused on creating reasonable doubt in the minds of the jurors. Mr. Henderson's attorney argued that the prosecution's case was based on circumstantial evidence, and that there was no direct proof that he had intentionally killed Linda. They challenged the validity of his confession, claiming that it had been coerced, and that he had been suffering from emotional distress at the time. They also sought to undermine the credibility of the prosecution's witnesses, highlighting any inconsistencies in their testimony or any potential biases they might have had. The defense team argued that Mr. Henderson was a victim of circumstance, an ordinary man who had made a terrible mistake but was not a cold-blooded killer. They appealed to the jury's sense of empathy, urging them to consider the possibility that Mr. Henderson was telling the truth and that Linda's death had been a tragic accident. The defense knew it was an uphill battle, but they were determined to fight for their client's freedom and to ensure that he received a fair trial. For Linda's family, the pre-trial proceedings and the upcoming trial were a torturous ordeal. Each hearing, each motion, each legal maneuver forced them to relive the pain of her disappearance and the anguish of not knowing her fate. They sat in the courtroom, their faces etched with grief and determination, listening intently to the arguments presented by both sides. They were determined to be present every step of the way, to bear witness to the legal process, and to ensure that Linda's voice was heard. The trial promised to be an emotionally draining experience, forcing them to confront the brutal reality of her death and the chilling details of Mr. Henderson's crime. Yet they were resolute in their commitment to seeing justice served and to honoring Linda's memory. They drew strength from each other, from the support of their community, and from their unwavering faith in the legal system. They knew that the road ahead would be long and difficult, but they were determined to persevere and to find a measure of peace in the pursuit of justice. The trial was not just about holding Mr. Henderson accountable. It was about honoring Linda's life and ensuring that her story was never forgotten. The trial loomed, a dark cloud on the horizon, but the family stood united, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The courtroom was packed, a sea of faces reflecting a mix of emotions, grief, anger, morbid curiosity, and a solemn sense of civic duty. Linda's family sat in the front row, their eyes fixed on Mr. Henderson, who sat impassively at the defense table. The air crackled with anticipation as the trial commenced, each day a grueling test of endurance for everyone involved. The prosecution presented a meticulously constructed case, weaving together forensic evidence, digital records, and witness testimonies to paint a damning portrait of Mr. Henderson as a calculated killer. The defense countered with a strategy of obfuscation and doubt, attempting to poke holes in the prosecution's narrative and portray Mr. Henderson as a victim of circumstance. Key witnesses took the stand, each offering a piece of the puzzle. Forensic experts detailed the trace evidence found in Mr. Henderson's car and on his clothing, meticulously explaining the scientific analysis that linked him to the crime scene. Law enforcement officials recounted the interrogation process, describing Mr. Henderson's initial denials and his eventual confession. They testified about the discovery of Linda's remains, their voices thick with emotion as they described the desolate location where she had been buried. The testimonies were technical and often dry, but they carried the weight of scientific authority, bolstering the prosecution's case. Each witness added another layer to the prosecution's narrative, slowly building a wall of evidence around Mr. Henderson. Perhaps the most compelling testimonies came from the individuals who knew Linda best, her family and friends. Doug, her husband, spoke of their life together, his voice breaking as he described her warmth, her intelligence, and her unwavering love for their children. He recounted the day she disappeared, the frantic search efforts, and the agonizing years of uncertainty that followed. Her children, though young, bravely took the stand, sharing their memories of their mother and expressing their grief at her loss. Their words, simple and heartfelt, resonated deeply with the jury, reminding them of the human cost of Mr. Henderson's actions. Linda's friends testified about her vibrant personality, her dedication to her work, and her unwavering commitment to her community. They described the void that her disappearance had left in their lives and the enduring pain of knowing that she was gone. These testimonies, filled with emotion and personal anecdotes, humanized Linda and transformed her from a victim into a real person, a woman who was loved and missed by many. The defense attempted to discredit these witnesses, questioning their motives and highlighting any potential biases they might have had. They suggested that Doug was motivated by grief and a desire for revenge, that Linda's friends were exaggerating her virtues to paint a more sympathetic picture. But their efforts were largely unsuccessful, as the sincerity and authenticity of the witnesses shone through. The jury seemed unmoved by the defense's attempts to undermine their credibility, recognizing the genuine pain and loss that they had experienced. The prosecution's witnesses were not simply offering testimony. They were bearing witness to the impact of Mr. Henderson's actions on the lives of those who knew and loved Linda. As the trial drew to a close, the atmosphere in the courtroom grew increasingly tense. The jury listened intently to the closing arguments, each side presenting their final summation of the evidence. The prosecution reiterated their case, emphasizing the overwhelming weight of evidence that pointed to Mr. Henderson's guilt. They reminded the jury of his lies, his inconsistencies, and the forensic evidence that linked him to the crime scene. They urged them to hold him accountable for his actions and to bring justice to Linda and her family. The defense, on the other hand, argued that the prosecution's case was based on speculation and conjecture, that there was no direct proof that Mr. Henderson had intentionally killed Linda. They urged the jury to consider the possibility that her death had been an accident and that Mr. Henderson was simply a victim of circumstance. They reminded them of their duty to presume innocence and to acquit Mr. Henderson if they had any reasonable doubt about his guilt. The jury's deliberation process was shrouded in secrecy, a black box into which the fate of Mr. Henderson was entrusted. The hours ticked by slowly, each minute an eternity for Linda's family, who waited anxiously for news. Rumors swirled through the courtroom, fueled by speculation and conjecture. Some believed that the jury was deadlocked, unable to reach a unanimous verdict. Others claimed that a decision was imminent, that the jury was simply fine-tuning the wording of their verdict. The tension was palpable, the silence broken only by the occasional murmur of conversation. The weight of anticipation hung heavy in the air, as everyone waited for the verdict that would finally bring an end to the long and arduous legal process. Finally, after days of deliberation, the jury reached a decision. A court officer emerged from the deliberation room, his face expressionless, and informed the judge that the jury was ready to deliver their verdict. The news spread quickly through the courtroom, silencing the murmur of conversation and drawing everyone's attention to the judge's bench. Linda's family held hands, their faces a mixture of hope and fear. Mr. Henderson sat motionless at the defense table, his eyes fixed on the jury, his fate hanging in the balance. The judge entered the courtroom, his gavel banging loudly as he called for order. The clerk read the verdict, guilty on all counts. A gasp rippled through the courtroom. Linda's family erupted in tears, embracing each other in a mixture of relief and grief. Mr. Henderson remained impassive, showing no visible emotion as the verdict was read. The courtroom was a scene of controlled chaos. emotions running high as the weight of the verdict sank in. Justice, after years of waiting, had finally been served. The verdict marked the end of a long and difficult journey, bringing a measure of closure to Linda's family and the Boise community. But it also served as a reminder of the enduring pain and suffering caused by violent crime and the importance of holding perpetrators accountable for their actions. The trial was over, but the memories of Linda Carver and the impact of her disappearance would continue to resonate for years to come. The sentencing hearing arrived with a somber gravity. The courtroom, once buzzing with the frenetic energy of the trial, now held a quiet intensity. Linda's family braced themselves, knowing this was the final chapter in the legal saga, the moment Mr. Henderson would learn his fate. The defense made a last-ditch plea for leniency, citing his lack of prior violent offenses and portraying him as a man driven to desperation by circumstance. They argued for a reduced sentence, suggesting that his actions, while tragic, were not premeditated. The prosecution countered with a passionate appeal for justice, emphasizing the brutality of the crime, the years of anguish inflicted upon Linda's family, and the need to send a clear message that such acts would not be tolerated. They argued for the maximum sentence, ensuring that Mr. Henderson would spend the rest of his life behind bars, paying for his heinous crime. The judge listened intently, carefully weighing the arguments presented by both sides. He acknowledged the profound loss suffered by Linda's family and the devastating impact of her disappearance on the community. He also considered Mr. Henderson's background and the circumstances surrounding the crime. After a moment of reflection, he delivered his sentence: life in prison without the possibility of parole. The sentence was met with a collective sigh of relief from Linda's family and supporters. It was a harsh punishment, but they believed it was just, a fitting consequence for the unspeakable crime that Mr. Henderson had committed. The judge's decision echoed through the courtroom, a resounding declaration that violence would not go unpunished and that the scales of justice had finally been balanced. For Linda's family, it was the end of a long and agonizing chapter, a moment of closure that allowed them to begin the difficult process of healing and moving forward. With the sentencing complete, a profound sense of justice settled over Linda's family and the community. The years of uncertainty, the emotional turmoil of the trial, and the agonizing wait for closure had finally come to an end. Mr. Henderson would spend the remainder of his days incarcerated, paying the price for his actions. While no punishment could ever fully compensate for the loss of Linda's life, the sentence brought a measure of peace to her family, knowing that her killer would never again be able to inflict harm on others. The verdict and the sentencing hearing marked a turning point, allowing the community to begin the process of healing and rebuilding, to remember Linda not as a victim, but as a vibrant and loving person whose life had been tragically cut short. The memory of her would serve as a reminder of the importance of vigilance, compassion, and the unwavering pursuit of justice. The long-term impact of Linda's disappearance and the subsequent trial on her family was profound and enduring. They had endured unimaginable grief and uncertainty, their lives forever altered by the senseless act of violence that had taken her away. Doug, her husband, faced the daunting task of raising their children without their mother, grappling with his own grief while trying to provide them with the love and support they needed. The children, though young, carried the emotional scars of their loss, struggling to understand what had happened and longing for the mother they would never see again. They faced challenges that no child should ever have to endure, growing up in the shadow of tragedy and learning to navigate a world without their mother's guidance and love. But despite the immense pain and hardship, the family demonstrated remarkable resilience, drawing strength from each other and from the unwavering support of their community. They found ways to honor Linda's memory, keeping her spirit alive through stories, photographs, and acts of kindness. They established a foundation in her name, dedicated to promoting safety and awareness in the real estate industry, ensuring that her legacy would continue to make a positive impact on the lives of others. The case of Linda Carver offered several important lessons, underscoring the importance of vigilance in everyday life and the dedication of law enforcement in pursuing justice, even in cold cases. It highlighted the need for real estate agents to prioritize their safety when showing properties alone, taking precautions to protect themselves from potential harm. It also demonstrated the power of community support, the way in which individuals can come together to offer comfort, assistance, and hope in the face of tragedy. The case served as a reminder that justice may be delayed, but it is never truly denied, and that even the most complex and challenging investigations can be solved with perseverance, dedication, and the unwavering pursuit of truth. It also underscored the importance of remembering the victims of violent crime, honoring their lives, and ensuring that their stories are never forgotten. The most unsettling aspect of the Linda Carver case was the unexpected identity of the culprit. Mr. Henderson was not a criminal mastermind, not a notorious figure with a history of violence. He was an ordinary man, someone who blended seamlessly into the background, someone who could have been anyone's neighbor, colleague, or acquaintance. His ordinariness made his crime all the more chilling, a reminder that evil can lurk in the most unexpected places. It took years of painstaking investigation, the application of new technologies, and a fresh perspective to uncover his guilt. The detectives who reopened the case refused to give up, meticulously re-examining the evidence, re-interviewing witnesses, and pursuing every possible lead. Their unwavering commitment to justice ultimately led to the breakthrough that brought Mr. Henderson to justice. Linda Carver's life was a testament to the power of kindness, compassion, and unwavering dedication. She was a loving wife, a devoted mother, and a respected member of her community. Her loss left a void that could never be truly filled, but her memory continues to inspire those who knew her. Her story serves as a reminder to cherish the moments we have with our loved ones and to live each day to the fullest. The Linda Carver case is a reminder that even in the face of tragedy, hope can endure, and that justice, however delayed, can ultimately prevail. Thank you for watching this deep dive into the Linda Carver case. We hope this video has shed light on this tragic story and honored Linda's memory. If you enjoyed this content, please subscribe to our channel for more true crime investigations and cold case analyses. You might also enjoy our videos on other unsolved mysteries and criminal cases. Click the links on the screen to explore more captivating stories and delve deeper into the world of true crime. Your support helps us continue to bring these important stories to light.